Grace and peace to you. I'm Alan Combs, lead pastor here at First United Methodist Church, coming to you with part 2 of our video about our upcoming HVAC project. Last video, I had our property chair, Ben Crew, who laid out the scope of the project and what it's going to require. If you haven't watched part 1, I invite you to make sure you spend some time going back and watching part 1 to learn more about the project itself. But as promised, we want to talk about the funding plan for the HVAC project here at the church. And so for that, I have with me today Mark Moore, who is the chair of our finance committee. He's going to answer a few questions about that. Of course, Mark is always available for questions. If you see him at church, if you have more questions about the project, we can always connect you with him. But just to, obviously, Mark, the first question that we have is, we've heard about the project itself, and so what is the total cost for the air handler project that Ben described last week?
Currently, the commitment we've made to train, we've already committed to $737,000. Plus the committee felt like a good number for any contingencies, unexpected things that we may run into in an old building or with old equipment would be 10%. So a little bit over $800,000 is the cost of the current project.
Okay, and so let's talk a little bit about, can you tell me about the funding plan that the finance committee approved? How are we hoping to pay for that project?
Yes, good question. The trustees have already obviously approved this project, and they've committed $400,000 from the endowment fund. In addition to that, we already have a pledge of $130,000 on a 2-for-1 match formula, meaning for every $2 we raise from the congregation, this donor will pledge, will pay $1.
Okay,
up
so
to $130,000.
Okay, so that means if we raise $260,000, we get $130,000, but it's up to that amount of money. So whatever we raise, we get the amount, the 2-for-1 matching amount.
Correct.
Okay.
Any additional funds that we need, approximately $300,000 to complete the project, we want to raise through a capital campaign from the congregation.
And Mark, one of the things I remember we talked about the finance committee when we were talking about the project is, in addition to the HVAC project, which has to get done because we have one part that's broken, we have 2 other handlers that are the same age. Another big concern that we've been dealing with along with those is the boilers. And of course, Ben and I showed everybody who was watching where the boilers are and talked a little bit about those last week. And so, but the finance committee talked a little about the boilers too. So can you talk about what their hope is in terms of fundraising, maybe for the boilers as well as the HVAC?
Yes. Well, as Ben mentioned, the boilers are from the same era, late 60s, and that's older equipment that we feel like is going to fail at some point. And so the committee's thought was that while we're going to the congregation at this time to ask for $300,000, let's go ahead and ask for the funds to replace the boilers, which would be another approximately $200,000. So the goal of our capital campaign is going to be $500,000, $300,000 for what we've already committed to, and then $200,000 to replace the boilers, which would, again, set us up for long-term success as a church and improve efficiency, all the things that Ben talked about.
Right, well, and of course, also just knowing that we're dealing with this major project right now, we also know that what we don't want is to have to come right back in 3 years because one of the boilers goes out. And so, the idea is like, if we're gonna do this, let's try to do as much of it as we can, as you said, to set us up really well for going forward for the next, hopefully 20 to 30 years or something like that. So,
exactly.
So absolutely a good call from the finance committee, I think. So I guess we're obviously hoping to raise this money. What is the finance committee's plan if we don't raise the total amount of funds that we need to raise for the project? So we have to have $300,000. What happens if we don't raise that amount of money? What's our plan?
Yeah. Well, we do have some time. Our time frame is, as Ben mentioned in the video, the work is not going to start until January. We have had to make some payments already. We've put down a down payment. We'll have some other payments when the equipment is ordered. But if we don't raise the funds through the capital campaign, then we would we would go out and borrow the funds. And we've already made some contact with some financial institutions to put that in place if it's needed. Currently, the church is debt-free, which is great. And we would obviously love to remain debt-free, but that would be our backup plan if the campaign doesn't raise the needed funds. And then at that point, then the campaign would turn into retiring that debt as quickly as we can.
Certainly. So, well, that's super helpful. So obviously our hope is that we can remain debt free, and in order to do that, we will need to have more conversations about the support. And so we're hoping very soon to have an opportunity to gather together, hopefully with Ben and Mark, to be able to answer any more questions in a setting, maybe in the fellowship hall or somewhere else where people can gather and ask some of these questions. But if you have questions in the meantime about the project, if you're interested in what a donation would look like and how that works, Mark would be glad to answer that question. We always invite you to reach out to me. We're glad to connect with you on those. Please call the church office if you want to make that connection. Mark, I want to thank you for the Finance Committee's hard work. These are hard decisions that we have to make, and yet these are decisions we know are important. And so we want to thank the Finance Committee for their work on this, and we'll look forward to hearing more and talking more about the project itself, as well as the capital campaign behind it to try to raise the money we need. So Mark, thanks for being with me today.
All right. Thank you, Alan.